Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
Coming up, my conversation with David Hunstone of the Hub Agency from London. We talk about video and content and enabling leaders and subject matter experts to convey their humanity and authenticity through content. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you. So I'd like to jump right in and get to the meat of it. So we're going to be talking a lot about content and production value and production levels and the trade-off between low production versus high production and how audiences respond. But let's start with, where does production quality actually start to impact results in the context of content marketing? And where does it become a complete waste of time?
So when I think about this, I think about it in terms of longevity of the content. How long is the content going to be around for? If you've got a piece of content that you're creating, which is going to be an evergreen content asset, it's worth putting a bit of production budget behind that. If it's going to be quite short and disposable, less budget needed. So use it for
short shelf life.
Yeah, or however, there's a counteract to that, because if you're doing something which is going to have enormous visibility over a short shelf life, then it's still worth putting production budget behind it. You know, if you are the brand that can afford a Super Bowl ad, for example, one-time moment, largest televised audience in the world, worth spending a bit of budget. So it's a sort of way up between visibility and longevity, and then it's a common sense approach for how much production budget you put behind something in order to make sure you got value.
So those examples, some of that is, I'll call it decision-making criteria for you to decide what warrants budget, what doesn't. But sometimes when you actually start down the path of production, what are some early signs where you might be overspending, or like the things are getting away from you, or that maybe you're like, well, you initially thought, oh, this is getting bigger than I anticipated, or getting bigger than it should be?
So are you talking in terms of when things start to go wrong and you're still throwing good money after bad?
I guess pausing to ask yourself, do we really need to? I think back to, like, if you know Second City or SCTV, it was like Johnny LaRue always wanted a crane shot.
Right, yeah.
And the investment that warranted. It's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I have a background in film and television. I have a degree in film production. I made films, but I can shoot higher quality stuff with my phone than the equipment I had available to me then. And so the lay person, the amateur, is now potentially a better filmmaker in some ways, or content maker, than people in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two sides to that. There's I've had clients before when they want to start creating video content, and it's a different from their day job, and they get super excited about that whole process. But then it can go rogue, and we have the name for when a client starts going Spielberg on us, and that's a dangerous situation to be in. That's when things like the crane shots and the vision come out, and as filmmakers or video makers, we all love the tools, of course, but you've still got to do something. If you want repeat business, you've got to do stuff that is commercially viable, and I always kind of come back to that. It's got to, you should do the job for what it's intended to be doing, and it's hard of it. And of course, great storytelling you can do great storytelling with just on phones, as you know. There's I forget the name of the Danny Boyle shot a whole feature film on using a mobile phone. It's not just him doing it though. He's still got his cinematographer. He's still got his cast. He's still got, so it's even though the tool itself is perhaps a phone, you've still got a small army behind you which goes into the construction and the craft of filmmaking.
There was a few caveats about shooting on iPhone, but here we are, we're an ocean apart. You're not in a studio with a green screen and a satellite feed, nor am I on my end. I'm sitting in my office at home. We're using Riverside to record this via the internet. And so the barriers to entry have been removed. And then I think about during COVID, the analogy I like to use is like, we watched talk shows that were shot on Zoom.
Yeah, Yeah.
And that was just the reality. Part of me thinks that that has influenced this shift to forgiving production value for access. And but it just still makes me wonder, like, did that movement, because of the COVID example, have we gone too far and the pendulum needs to swing back a little bit to production value? Or this is now the world we live in, and you look at TikTok and you can have millions of views for a video that someone shot in their living room on their phone versus Casey Neistat that had funding from Nike to go make a commercial.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of go back to that. It's that perception, isn't it? Because everyone is used to doing Zoom calls, Teams calls, whatever that is. Everyone now has a camera on their phone. They've got great quality lenses on. They've got editing software built within the phone itself. They've got all the tools there. But just because you've got the tools there doesn't mean that you necessarily know how to use them all or to be able to stitch everything together. And I sort of go back. I actually think it's kind of stemmed from further back than the pandemic. Actually, I sort of saw this coming from when reality TV was started becoming a thing. In the UK, it was the first big show that really caught everyone's attention was Big Brother. And then now it's Love Island. Now everyone's crazy about maths, Married at First Sight, and but if you take a show, for example, like Love Island, Love Island.
Yep, there's lots of memes from Love Island.
Okay,
that I've been
Love
enjoying.
Island. People watch that and they're just like, it's so entertaining. People are just living their lives and doing things, and it's great. It turns them all into celebrities. Love Island, they've got 80 cameras shooting 24 hours a day. And they're getting so much content, and the craft of trying to sift through all of that content and actually turn that into an engaging half-hour TV show takes a real skill. It's a craft where they're combining storytelling together with character arcs across a whole series, a narrative arc across one single episode, using music, sound effects, voiceover, all of these different elements that they're pulling together in order to create something that stands up and you watch it and it feels like it's reality TV, but the art that has gone behind that just to make it look seamless is the stuff that people don't necessarily realize, but they do realize it when they see someone try to attempt something which then doesn't land. So this is where I think companies and businesses get into trouble, because they see YouTube artists or social media influencers. They're the same. They spend hours and years perfecting their craft. You'll know this from your world.
Well, Mr. Beast talked about how many different thumbnails he tested for his YouTube videos.
Yeah.
He went scientific for his thumbnails. Something is to many people like, really? What? He knew how integral that one facet of a video that he was wanting to perform for him. He knew that first interaction people had with his video was the thumbnail and how critical it was. And I like the word you chose, craft. And so, yes, I have a phone that can shoot, HD. Yes, I have a phone that has editing software. That doesn't mean I understand editing theory. That doesn't mean, if I want to make you look evil, I shoot you from below. The shooting coverage and don't cross these are all film terms for those that, listening and watching that are less familiar. But that makes me think, is it the founder, the marketer, the agency? Who is more likely to fall into the trap of going Spielberg versus, like you said, Lyle has 80 cameras. So we try to, even what I'm doing here with you I'm going to turn this into multiple pieces of content. But it's with an editorial eye about what's going to make a good clip, what's going to make a good audio clip, and so on. Again, it goes back to the fundamentals. We're looking for that hook that's potentially going to garner some interest. But I'm wondering, from in your experience when you're working, can agencies fall into this trap? Founders, how do we sift through the hype and go back to the fundamentals?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think anyone can fall into this kind of trap, but for different reasons. It's not, when we call it a founder, I guess we're talking about founder of a business. There is, yeah. So they can definitely fall into it because they'll be passionate about their business, they'll be passionate about their product, and they'll be launching in, and they have a potential to go Spielberg just through enthusiasm and self-belief sometimes.
Well, I look at Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V, and he has a team that follows him around, recording every second of his day. So he's his own reality TV show. Now, he
Yeah.
never edits a single thing. I'm speculating because he has a team to do it. But like he's just pontificating, like not 24/7, but certainly 18 hours out of the 24-hour day, and people are capturing it, and then they're turning it into content. And he was having a blog discussion with his team, but they were filming the blog discussion. So he said, "I'm getting meta here. I'm talking about content, and that me talking about content is going to be content."
Yeah. Yeah, and then not everyone can be a Gary V, really, or
Nor should they.
or no.
No slight against Gary. I've met him. He was a great evangelist, but not everyone can live his life. He's a global agency owner, and so he has a team
Yeah.
surrounding him. But for someone who is a team of one, they don't have those same opportunities. But anyway, I cut you off. Back to who's more likely to go Spielberg versus
Yeah, I think it's just, in my experience, and it's probably also slightly to do with the work that we do. It's usually the client that's signing off on the budget and knows the business and knows the product better than the people that they're paying to do the content for them. That the problem comes in the sense of, yes, that they may understand the product better, but they're not necessarily knowing how best to deliver that experience into a content format built for the audience in mind. And I think that's often where the root problem comes. It's almost, you used to see this in I mean, I've been in this game for a long time. So when corporate videos, used to be done on VHS cassettes, and they were usually being done just when there was a bit of excess marketing budget to make disappear, and then it was like, right, let's get a corporate video done. And really what it was just a job to amplify and let the business shout about what they did. And I think a lot of businesses still think of marketing in that way, and you'll know that's that's the wrong way to go about doing things. You need to start thinking about things from, what does my audience want? What do I need to hear? And then how do we make ourselves relevant to that particular audience type? And I think this is where the Spielberg problem starts. The person that's most likely to fall in that trap is just someone that knows it very, very well, but they're in that transmit mode as opposed to being empathetic and flipping it the other way and thinking, well, how best for us to display ourselves to actually resonate to our target audience and target client.
Well, and is it a matter of, so if they fall into the trap of transmission or broadcast, like, look at how great we are, which is not the path, because I mean, that's a turnoff. And to your point, starting with the fundamentals, who is our audience and what does our audience want to watch, hear, read, etc. And so does that lead to a conversation with you about how to optimize their budget to serve that end? Or, how do you sort of pull them back from the Spielberg cliff and reorient them towards addressing the audience properly?
I mean, I think it starts right, the Spielberg problem happens when you're actually in production on the set and on the shoot, and to head that off at the pass is getting things done in the right way from the outset, and that's a strategy. That's designing, and the strategy is the solution to all manner of ills. Is that at the outset you decide what is it that we're actually trying to achieve, who are we trying to achieve it for, and then you start to, once you know your end destination, you recognize where you are and you fill in the gaps to get there. In order to understand that solidly, you need to understand who this particular audience is. What's the outcome that you're trying to ultimately aim for this piece of content to do? Are you trying to get them to buy your product? Are you trying to get them to attend your event? Are you trying to get them to tune into your webinar? Are you trying to get them to visit your web? Any number of outcomes. What's going to make them do that? Get inside their heads. The core marketing personas, what makes them tick. You then work backwards from that point, and then you start building out your content plan to deliver on that metric. If you've got your strategy in place from the outset, it's going to head off any part of that Spielberg moment when you're actually on set, because you should have everything mapped out. You've aligned that with your client, so there's a reason behind every single decision that you take within any type of production. And as you'll know yourself, when you're on production, there's a million decisions that you have to, even though you have everything locked down, you are going through. Production is a live environment. Things happen, and that's why you have a team of experienced, skilled people. In a high production setting, you'll have a sound man, you'll have a director of photography, they'll have an assistant. All of these people are there to make decisions on the spot, to align on that strategy to get you to the best outcome possible. When you have a client that comes in Spielberg zone and sort of goes, I'm paying for all these hugely talented people who have spent their whole careers doing this, but I know better. That's where the ludicrousy, if that's the word, that's where the thing, that's why we call them client going Spielberg as being a problem.
Well, I've described it to people to say, I said, based on my experience, I can look at a script but I can look at a business plan. And through the same sort of frame of mind that I look at a script and go, okay, in order to shoot this scene, here's what we need. What kind of equipment, what kind of crew, what the implications are of the set, and so on. And that ability to visualize what isn't on the paper, but what needs to be in place to deliver a finished product of what's described on paper, I apply to a business plan. And so it speaks to that idea of a set as a living place. The actor is being captured by the lens, but you have no idea just how many people are behind the camera and the surroundings on the set to create an environment for that capture. Highly collaborative, but sometimes, as you were describing, we have to be reminded of the business fundamentals, meaning, why are we doing this? And it's not to just make ourselves feel good, like, oh, we're going to shoot a bunch of different pieces of content talking about how great we are. That serves no purpose and will die on the vine. But if we shoot some content that is designed to appeal to our audience, engage them, and deliver some value, do you still have to, when you're working with different clients, remind them, even over the course of your engagement, of the why we're doing this?
Yeah, I think part of this is I will answer your question, but in a slightly roundabout way, if that's okay.
No problem.
If we consider what we've talked about so far, is that we've talked about the Spielberg issue, the need for strategy, the need for planning, and a set being a live environment. If you've done all of your structure and your strategy, and you know what your core components are, you know what you're going to capture, you know the messages that you've got to get, the narrative that you've got to capture on that day, you just lock all of that down, so you've got the parts of the jigsaw that you need. If you then want to go and start improvising slightly, that's fine, do it, because you've got it in the can already. And then you can, let creativity take its place, or try and grab that crane shot if you want. But you can do that safely, knowing that you've got all of the parts already there, and you can piece together the story. There's nothing worse than going into the edit and you're like, where's that shot? That's, shot 65. Where is it? I didn't get it because we were off, shooting this close up of a wheel or something. It's like you need and that's where you're storyboarding and you're planning and you're mapping it down. And because you're a professional, you can visualize these. These are why these parts of the process are so important, to do it and make sure it makes sense. A paper and pen stage before you're in the process of spending the client's money. Shoots are expensive, aren't they? So you're burning cash every hour. You do all your thinking, all your workings out when it's the cheapest way to make mistakes and the cheapest way to make corrections. That's a pencil and paper stage. And then as you start to move through the layers, the processes, more budget is starting to be utilized at those points. But that discipline of filmmaking, whether you're creating a feature film or if you're creating a social video for your YouTube channel, those fundamental principles are fabulous, because they will prevent you from making mistakes and making sure that you get to that finished output that's going to deliver on the overall strategy right at the beginning. So I think that's part of it, and that's the same if you're a self-shooter or if you're leading a film crew of 200. It's the same process, the same fundamentals, and I think that answers your question, but I may have got lost slightly.
Well, I think it's kind of counterintuitive for some that the more planning you do in the cheapest way possible, like storyboarding and so on, like in a low risk circumstance, the more planning you do, the better the shoot's going to go. But as well, the more freedom. Oh, okay, we got the must-have shot list is done. So now you can say, okay, now we have a little bit of freedom. Let's try a few things, because you've done such a good job of the planning. You now have some playtime foreseeably, or let's try a couple different things. So we now have options in post-production to try some different things and so on. And I just think that idea of, it sounds counterintuitive that the more planning and I don't want to say rigid process, to many that would suggest that it doesn't provide freedom to experiment, but it actually can set you up to do so.
100%. And I did, this goes back to stuff which I sort of learned at college, which was creativity is not about just going with it and improvisation and make it up as you go along. It's creativity is hard work. Artists are people that bother. People that aren't artists are people that didn't bother to put in the hard work. Creativity is a process that you go through. It takes, and that's the craft that comes into it. And the trick is to be making it look effortless. And that's the Love Island example that we talked about, but it's the same for a beautiful television commercial. It's the same for a video that's, got 12 million views on YouTube. It's all of these things coming together. I was looking at a show, an educational series on improving creativity in business, and it was being led by a British advertising legend, a guy called John Hegarty. It's just launching, and I was just having a look through the course curriculum, and like lesson 1 was how to write a brief. The whole course on creativity, and lesson 1 was the thinking part, the strategy. Again, it goes back to do that bit first, and that you have a good brief and your chances of having a good outcome at the end increased by about 500%. Go into something with a bad brief, you're almost guaranteeing yourself, setting yourself up for failure.
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins. Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com. Now, back to the show.
Well, you mentioned something earlier about the storyboarding, which leads me to a question. So I don't know if you saw the recent announcement about, I'm not sure it's called Interpicture or Interpositive, I think is the name of the company that Ben Affleck had created. And it's an AI company, and he sold it to Netflix for $600 million. He figured out a way, with a team around him as well, to address the concerns of actors who didn't they're worried about an avatar replacing them, that kind of thing. Well, what he did with Interpositive was the actors still remain the centerpiece. But what Interpositive does is enable to, if you're familiar with the term volume for a production facility where they render everything on the external walls, and so the studio it's a studio, but you want to look like you're on the savannah desert, they render within the volume outside of it. So he's done something similar called Interpositive, where they can place the actors, sitting at a dining room table in the Palace of Versailles, done. Oh, you want them speeding down a roller coaster? But the actors have not been replaced. It's enabled them to create multiple environments in a single place cost effectively. And so it's a long-winded preamble to say, when you look at storyboarding, prep work, and so on, are you using AI in any ways, or do you see that this is going to become an inevitable thing for preparation and content production?
I mean, the work that we do at Hub, which is my agency, is predominantly serving clients within financial services spaces. So where we've used AI or almost like a virtual reality type environments is when we are filming with fund managers, portfolio managers who are sitting in a studio space, and they may be talking about a fund which they are investing in, which is specializing in emerging markets, for example. And we'll have them talking about companies or the macroeconomic environment of that country or the opportunities, the advantages, telling the story about their fund. But because we're in a virtual environment, we can then change the backgrounds to actually suit that, so we can put them in that space. There's different levels that you can do that at. You can either just have them sitting on a chair and essentially it's a green screen behind them, or you can start playing with the environment. So you start combining reality. So you may have content which is actually on the stage in front of you, but then the screen's changing behind him. So you're mixing up reality with the virtual reality behind. I'm sure you do. That's about as far as it goes for us. We're not at that next stage, which I think is the principles are the same, but the volume of material that you create is different altogether.
Well, and how are you navigating? You mentioned all of the work in financial services. Also, like the issue of I now can clone myself and have my clone do a YouTube demo or like I can give it the script and say, here's 5 things you need to know about content strategy, like whatever. And does that help me scale my content production? Yes. But we do a lot of work in financial services as well, which is tremendously trust-based. So talk to me a little bit about how you're using content in the financial services sector to establish and build and maintain trust.
So I have read about there'll be CEOs that absolutely all they want to do is their job, and they regard marketing as a sort of pain that they have to kind of deal with. So
do I have to?
This is sometimes the case with fund managers as well. They'd rather be sitting there. They regard it as their day job and the marketing as a sort of annoyance. So I'm sure if you said to them, hey, look, we can clone you and we can just make you say anything which you like, part of them would go, well, that'd be great, because then I wouldn't have to do any of it. But the reality is that their compliance department would probably never allow that to happen.
Yeah, you'd give them a heart attack.
But it's a trust issue, and as you say, are you aware of the PR company Edelman?
Yes, and the trust barometer.
The Edelman Trust Barometer. So I think it's been going maybe 20 years. I think financial services as a sector managed to pick itself up off being consistently the bottom of all business sectors. It managed to pick itself up off the very bottom about 2 years ago and has risen like one place up or something. So it's the second least most trusted sector.
But it's still, the issue there is that it is still institutions across the various sectors that are trusted the least. And so the idea that we trust people over institutions leads us to evangelize or to argue to the CEO of a bank or a wealth management that you should be on camera because it's not like the brand is one thing, but the trust is actually in you and your people. But to your point, if they're not willing to be on camera, so talk to me a little bit about that struggle.
Well, when we're doing, we do it with the work that we do, we do a lot of speaking to investors. So my clients are, they're targeting either professional investors or what they call retail investors, the average folk on the street. And the products that we work for, they'll either be by humans, which we'll call active fund management. So you've got a human physically making the decision, that's a fund manager. Or there'll be passives, companies like Vanguard, which is tracking an index or something like that. Now, when we talk about the importance of trust, you obviously need trust in both types of companies, but where we see the most and when we can influence the trust the most is in active fund management. That's when our job is to take the end consumer and help them build their trust in that company and in that individual investment process. And ultimately, we need to get them to trust the person that's making the decisions with their money. And when we speak to retail investors, what they want to know about is they want to know who's the person that's making those, what's the fabric of them, what are they like, what's their character like. In old money, what we'd say is they want to be able to look into their whites of their eyes and determine, is this person trustworthy or not? And that's where content can actually amplify that experience, because the fund manager doesn't want to go out and meet 12 million retail investors, but a piece of content can do that for him. But you need to then shoot that content in a way that is actually building that trust with you need to give that example of them looking into the whites of their eyes and actually engaging with them, understanding them as a human and moving them out. One of the things that we do, because again, going back to the problems that fund managers don't like leaving their desks or doing all this stuff, they'll be like, okay, well, if I've got to create a video, can we just shoot it at my desk? And you're like, well, yeah, we could do that. And, and that's going to be a lot cheaper. It's going to take you less time. Or we could do something else and we could actually find out about what is it that makes you fantastic at your job? What is it that makes you passionate about the work that you do? Do you worry about the amount of money that people have, their livelihoods, and they're putting their trust in you managing their money? Does it keep you up at night? Tell me the stuff that is actually going on inside here, which actually makes you a bit more memorable to me, but also makes me appreciate why I trust you to give you my £10,000, £20,000. When you start getting down to this, then we have these conversations with fund managers when we're trying to argue the case of, right, yeah, I'll give you 15 minutes by my desk, or I'll give you a whole day where I'll come out of the office and we'll do something a little bit different. Because that's what I'm asking for. I'm asking for them to give up a whole day, and they're going, well, I can shoot it on my phone and I can be done. We do this a lot, and we know that, and we've seen it in the marketplace. We've had people where I have managed to persuade them to take a day out, and there's this lovely chap, fund manager, who explained to me that his reasoning for getting into the money markets all stemmed from his love of rugby. That when he was a young man, he used to play rugby at one of the oldest rugby clubs in Edinburgh in Scotland. And it was from there that he discovered his passion for competition. And he linked it all back to the philosophy of how he ran his money for this particular fund. So we were like, great, let's go up there. Let's take you out of the office and take you up to this club in Edinburgh, and we'll have this conversation there. So we took him up and we shot this beautiful video, and it was still a traditional talking head, but it was set within this environment, and then we got him looking around the place, and we stitched it all together, and we put music in it. I bumped into that fund manager. He'd just retired, and this was about 7 years after the video. He came up to me and said, David, I still get people coming up to me, talking to me about that video, even after all these years. That's the difference between doing something that's properly done and thought out and Do you think people have been coming up to him saying 7 years later, remember that video of you standing beside your desk? It just wouldn't happen. But it was memorable, it was different. It made him more human, and therefore it did a better job.
Well, and it strikes me that you took him out of his office environment, you put him back into an environment that, meant something to him in his heart of hearts. And probably it kind of like lifted his spirits, or like just helped feed him with enthusiasm for what he was doing. Just enriching, I guess, is maybe the better word. Convincing someone that we're going to humanize you, which, sometimes they're like, well, what do you mean I'm a human being? I'm a nice person. Well, yeah, you are, but the vibe of you sitting behind or standing beside your desk versus putting you back into the environment of days gone by is going to shift your thinking, how you come across, and so on. But what are those conversations like? Obviously, he was receptive to it, but I suspect there are others that are like, I don't need to be that. But it goes back to the trust building. Why do we have icebreakers? Because it makes us more interesting.
Yep.
We have conversations to humanize us, like the small talk that's unrelated to the work that we do, because we want to connect. And so, anyway, which leads me back to, how do you have those sorts of conversations to say, we're going to take you in a different direction? We're not going to be predictable, perhaps.
For me, I like investing time with them beforehand, with no cameras, me and a pen and paper, and just having a conversation and explaining, look, we've got I'd like to know more about you individually. This is why I'm asking these questions. Having an off-the-record discussion, an off-the-record chat. These are the sort of skills of a producer, really. Their job is to make the subject matter, as you said it before, trust them. They need to trust me that my job is solely to get the best performance out of them and the best output for the business, to deliver the objective for their client. That's purely my role. There's no self-preservation from me in this. I'm there to do a job. And I think by being honest to someone and explaining the method behind your madness and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve, and that's why you're going to start asking them some direct questions that may make them feel slightly uncomfortable, because they probably haven't been asked these questions before in a work environment. I think people, certainly in my experience, people are like, okay, well, you've explained it to me. You've told me that you're going to ask me some uncomfortable questions, and there's a reasoning behind that, and I'll either answer them or I won't. But when they do, and when they do open up to you, so many times I've come out of these prep meetings where people have gone, David, I really enjoyed that conversation. They're not used to it. And actually, people don't mind talking about, they're glad people are interested. And then again, if you tie that back into something they're very passionate about, which is their work or their job or their role or what they're trying to achieve, and you can actually link those two bits together, then you've got the prep to actually create something really, really good. You're starting to lay solid foundations of trust, but you're also starting to get those ideas, those little bits of knowledge or little bits of insight, which is then going to form the basis of your creative strategy going forward. So just, be interested in them and be direct, but be direct by explaining why you're going to be direct. Don't be rude and just come out with it. Explain, be direct, and away you go.
Well, it goes back to some of the prep work, but as we come to a close, what advice would you give to content marketers about, and beyond what you've already shared, about whether it's themselves or their leadership, to convey that trustworthiness, to show their humanity through content? Like, what other advice, if any, would you give for them to take away?
So if for people to do that, if they're appearing on camera themselves, you mean?
Or if I'm the head of marketing for a wealth management firm and I need to get a fund manager or the CEO, one, to be willing to be on camera, or even just, because video content is on the rise, and we'll conduct what I call subject matter interviews with leaders as well as subject matter experts. Especially on the subject matter expert side, they're not client facing necessarily. They know a certain area of their business. They're not accustomed to being interviewed. But it's kind of, you want to humanize the organization through the people by showing, here's some people that are making the business run behind the scenes that are integral in delivering the service that you enjoy or benefit from. And it's bridging that gap from, I've never been on camera, I've never been interviewed, to now, to your point, getting them out of their day-to-day, getting them comfortable to be a human being on camera.
So again, it goes back to just good principles of being a producer. Really, it's just getting them on side and making them realize that your sole job. I say this so many times in my job. My sole job is to make you look good on camera. So many people that are high up in businesses, in fund managers or in whatever industry that you're in, invariably the people that are being filmed are the senior ones, the thought leaders. Now, most of those people, if you put them in a board meeting, they'll smash it. You put them standing up in front of 1,000 people at an event, absolutely smash it. You put them in a room with 5 people and a TV camera, and they look like a deer in front of headlights, and it terrifies them. Yeah, and it happens all the time. And your job, if you're leading that shoot as a producer, is to make that not happen. And in the back of their heads, they're going to be thinking, I look awful on camera, I'm really dreading this. And it happens all the time. So you have to get them on side. You have to take the pressure off of the situation. So if you can speak to them before going into the shoot, always do that. Meet them outside the room. You go, right, we're going to go in, you're going to go into the room, and you're going to see that there's loads of lights, there's loads of people. I'm going to explain to you exactly what everyone's there to do. And often that is the key thing which just takes the pressure. You sit them down, you say, right, look, what we've got is that we've got 3 cameras set up, we've got a tight on you, a tight on the speaker, and then we've got a shot which is the wide. So you don't have to look at any of those cameras, but that's what they're there for. And then we've got some lights over here. And you just explain what everyone's job is to do. And you go, and all of these are all there to make sure that you're looking good. And all you've got to do is that you've got to talk to me, and you just calm everything down. And as soon as that happens, it's like you've just relieved the pressure, and you can almost hear this. And do you know what I mean? And it's just being, all you're being is being empathetic to a tension that exists in their mind.
You're just acknowledging that this is a foreign experience for them.
Yeah, and that's the best thing a producer can do. And even if people are super experienced in being in front of camera, I guarantee they'll always appreciate you dispersing the pressure for them.
And like you said, then they can look their best.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, listen, thank you very much for this. This was great and a little different from other episodes we've recorded to be so video and filming centric, which was great for me. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Andrew, for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.